Is imagination simply contained in the mind, or does it tap into an unseen world with messages waiting to be told? There is a place where legends cross over into our world, where strange visions and whispers beckon, and superstition takes hold. Step into the Black Cat's shadow with Andy Ussery.
Hi, and welcome to the first episode of the Black Cat's Shadow. On this podcast, I'm going to be discussing classic horror and science fiction movies. This podcast will have two types of episodes. This first episode will be what I call a Mythos Macabre type episode, where I explore a classic horror or science fiction movie and the related urban legends, myths, and real-life cases, if any. I think that the topics touched on by a lot of these classic movies are interesting to research and discuss, and find out if they are just simply inspired by folklore and legends, or could they possibly have a grain of truth to them as well. Because of the nature of this discussion, there will be spoilers in these episodes. The other type of episode will be what I like to call a freaky flashback. In these episodes, I will look at a popular horror or science fiction movie that has recently been released to review it, and also I will present a classic horror or science fiction movie that shares a similar plot that I feel may be just as good or even better. I will also be reviewing the classic movie too without spoilers. I think that these classics deserve to be mentioned and seen. A lot of these films were very avant-garde for their time, and were not accepted as well as horror and sci-fi is now. I have to admit that recently in the last several years, some of these classics are being shown the attention they deserve, with DVD and Blu-ray companies like Scream Factory, Arrow Video, and many others releasing these films with excellent transfers and loads of behind-the-scenes features. Also, there are many TV series being created based on these older movies that are true to the original material and show it the respect it deserves. There are also a lot of remakes being filmed of older movies, some not bad at all, but some are just lazy cash grabs. With that being said, the main purpose of this podcast will be to discuss the older classic horror and science fiction movies released before the year 2000. This episode will be a Mythos Macabre type episode where I'm exploring the Omen from 1976. The main topics in this movie are the idea of the Antichrist, or the possibility of the embodiment of evil and its origins. Christianity largely inspires this concept, but I will also be exploring any roots from other religions, mythology, and urban legends as well. Could it be possible that a person exists that is evil personified?
When the Jews return to Zion, and a comet rips the sky, the Holy Roman Empire rises, then you and I must die. From the eternal sea he rises, creating armies on either shore, turning man against his brother, till man exists no more.
The Omen seemed to carry a curse with it during production. The actor Gregory Peck and screenwriter David Seltzer each took separate planes to the UK at the start of production, and each plane was struck by lightning. During filming for the zoo scenes, a guard at the zoo was attacked and killed by 2 lions. A car hit the director, Richard Donner. During the shooting, the film crew chartered a plane, but ended up not using it, and another company used it instead, and it crashed at takeoff and hit a car and killed the passengers of the car and the pilot. The Omen was released on June 25th, 1976. The film starts with one of the most memorable theme songs in movie history. The chanting sounds like the beginning of some bizarre ritual that may summon some forgotten ancient evil. That evil takes the shape of a little boy named Damien, a child with mysterious origins and seemingly followed by death and tragedy. Will religious prophecies be fulfilled? Will evil in the flesh rise up to power and usher in the apocalypse? Can the forces of good change destiny? This movie starts off with an American ambassador, Robert Thorne, finding out that his newborn son has died during birth, but his wife doesn't know that the child died. Robert doesn't know how to tell his wife that their son is gone. Apparently this is a Catholic hospital, as there are priests and nuns working there. A priest tells Robert that they could adopt without his wife knowing, because another baby was also born that night, but its mother died during birth. The priest said that this would spare his wife grief and they can still have a son. Robert agrees to adopt the boy and presents it to his wife as their son. The movie then has a few scenes where he finds out that he will be the ambassador of Great Britain. They move there, find a house, and get settled in. The movie then picks up at Damien's 5th birthday party, where something tragic happens and we start to see that all is not well with little Damien. The ambassador is played by Gregory Peck, who is known for Roman Holiday from 1953, Guns of Navarone from 1961, and To Kill a Mockingbird from 1962. The actress Lee Remick plays his wife, who was also in Anatomy of a Murder in 1959, Days of Wine and Roses in 1962, and The Europeans in 1979. David Warner plays the photographer Jennings, and he is a very recognizable actor in such movies as Tron in 1982, Titanic in 1997, and Planet of the Apes in 2001. Billy Whitelaw plays the frightening Mrs. Baylock, and she was also in Alfred Hitchcock's movie Frenzy from 1972, Quills from 2000, and Hot Fuzz from 2007. And Damien was played by Harvey Stevens, who also appeared in the Omen remake of 2006 as a reporter, but wasn't in much else except a made-for-TV movie called Gauguin the Savage in 1980. The idea of an Antichrist is mainly from Christianity. It is seen as a specific person that is the exact opposite of Jesus Christ. He is said to bring about the final battle between good and evil, as described in the book of Revelation in the Bible. The verses talk about him ruling the earth and there being terrible suffering, so much so that this period of time is called the Great Tribulation. He is also referenced as the Beast and will have great power to deceive people and claim to be God. In Judaism, there is an anti-Messiah figure known as Armilus. According to various legends, he is a king who is the offspring of Satan and a virgin, or in some other tales it's Satan and a statue. He is said to be bald, partially deaf, partially maimed, and partially leprous. The Antichrist figure in Islam is known as Dajjal, which means deceiver. Largely, musicians wanting to appear vulgar or rebellious, such as Marilyn Manson and Johnny Rotten, have also used the term in pop culture. President Barack Obama and Bill Gates have even been accused of being the Antichrist. You could look at Emperor Nero as a real-life Antichrist, persecuting Christians before Rome made it their state religion. And in folklore, in the Merlin legend, Merlin is born from a demon and a virgin for the purpose of being an Antichrist-type figure. His mother could not let this happen and confessed to a church elder who baptized the child right away, severing his ties with Satan. Merlin's supernatural origin helped him to be one of the greatest wizards in literature. In the movie, it is discovered that Damien's mother was a jackal. I feel like Damien's origins were very interesting to look into and to see what the Bible says about the actual origins of the Antichrist. And so the Antichrist's birth, according to Christian texts, say it would be the opposite of Jesus' birth. So instead of being born of a virgin, he would be born of a whore. The Antichrist's origin is not explained specifically in the Bible, but there is no mention of a jackal, that's for sure. Another topic was Damien's protectors. In the movie, his protectors were the Rottweiler dogs and Mrs. Baylock. There are dog-like beings called hellhounds in various myths. They're described as black dogs like in the movie. The legend states that if a person makes eye contact with one more than once, then they will die. Kind of sounds like what happened to the first nanny. They are seen as protectors of the supernatural, guarding the knowledge of supernatural beings from the rest of the world. The most famous is Cerberus from Greek mythology. Cerberus has 3 heads and is black with sharp teeth and has super strength, and he guards the gates of hell. Mrs. Baylock is described as an apostate of hell, which basically just means a servant or somebody who has renounced their religion, like maybe a servant of Satan. It is not revealed if she is a mere mortal or something supernatural, but she seems to have a way of controlling Damien to some extent. An example is when Damien drove his trike into the stool Karen Thorne was standing on, causing her to fall over the railing. During this scene, we see shots of Mrs. Baylock in deep concentration, like she has direct involvement in the so-called accident. Robert Thorne was able to kill her at the end, so it seems like she probably was a flesh and blood woman, most likely a Satan worshiper like Father Brennan was, before he repented. There was the scene at the zoo when the animals went crazy around Damien, and I read an interesting fan theory on this. It said that it had to do with his mother being a jackal, and that he quite possibly produced animal pheromones rather than human. Or it could be that the fact that the animals seem to have an uncanny ability to detect the true nature of a person, even though fellow humans cannot. Humans may see the signs, but think that they're crazy rather than admit to evil. Like Damien's mother, she sees all the weird things happening with Damien, but would rather think that she is going crazy than admit that she is afraid of her son. The photographer Jennings, he notices strange defects in the pictures that he takes of the nanny and Father Brennan. He sees, what would be the noose for the nanny and what would be the bar of metal that impales Father Brennan. See those as shadows in the pictures. He sees the connection when each person dies and sees that the shadows that he's seeing is showing how that person will die. I can't find anything in the folklore or urban legends that would match up with the mysterious shadows found in the pictures that Jennings develops in the movie. But there are a lot of weird things that show up in pictures from time to time, like orbs, vortexes, people that appear blurry or transparent, light streaks, and faces. Dust, bugs, cigarette smoke, a camera strap, moisture, and hair can all be possible explanations for some of these. Also, what's called pareidolia, which is when our brains see faces or recognizable shapes where none actually exist. It just kind of makes sense of random patterns or random shadows. And those can all be possible explanations for some of these. Another thing I was thinking about was, does the Antichrist know he's evil from birth, or does the evil take him over at some point? Is the vessel and the Antichrist separate beings? So if you kill Damien, are you also killing an innocent boy? Is his destiny set in stone? Would he grow up being able to rebel against his evil roots and become a force for good? It could be argued that Damien isn't really doing anything evil in the film. Most of the deaths are suicide or caused by strange accidents that could be chalked up to coincidence. But Mrs. Baylock's evil is clearly apparent, actually killing Mrs. Thorne and making it look like a suicide. In later films of the franchise, we see Damien discovering his identity, so it's possible that Damien is totally unaware of the evil happening around him. Director Richard Donner had all the supernatural elements removed from the screenplay to make the audience question whether Damien was really the Antichrist or was Robert Thorne simply losing his mind. And, the famous 666 mark. So, of course, Damien had the mark on his body to signify his identity. According to the Bible, 666 is the number of the beast. So that's the nickname for the Antichrist. 7 signifies perfection. So 6 would be its opposite, or unholy. And in religion, everything seems to have a direct contradiction. And that is the essence of temptation. In physics, Newton's third law states that every action has an equal and opposite reaction. So if you look at it from a scientific viewpoint, an interesting example of this is in John Carpenter's Prince of Darkness. The theory of the anti-God is introduced. The character Professor Edward Burak says, suppose there is a universal mind controlling everything, a God willing the behavior of every subatomic particle. Well, every particle has an anti-particle, its mirror image, its negative side. And in the movie, they talk about Robert discovers a way to destroy the Antichrist. In the movie, he had to stab Damien with 7 mystical daggers to kill him. And in the Bible, God is the one that ultimately destroys the Antichrist by throwing him into the lake of fire. So there is no instruction on how to kill him, even if you were to meet him in person, which is probably for the best. So I noticed that there's a new TV series coming out, or it's already out now, called Damien, and it's based on the first movie. It's kind of ignoring all of the sequels, and it started just in 2016 this year. It follows Damien Thorne as he has grown up, and he's discovering who he really is, and it's just trying to deal with it. It stars Bradley James as Damien. He has been in Merlin on BBC, but other than that, nothing else that sounds familiar to me. Also on the show is a woman actress, Megalyn Achiganwaki. I'm probably butchering that name. She played Penny on The Fallen, which a show that I'm a big fan of, even though it got canceled pretty much on a cliffhanger. And it has Barbara Hershey from Insidious, who was the wife's mother. And Insidious is another movie that I really liked as well. I haven't watched any of the episodes yet, so if anyone has been watching it, leave me a comment or let me know what you think. And so that's going to wrap up the first Mythos Macabre episode of Black Cat's Shadow. This has been a very interesting topic to research and think about. Is the Antichrist a purely supernatural being fully intent on taking over the world? Or does he also have a human side that is all too conscious of his actions? Can he make a turn for the better? And I don't know. They may explore more of that in the TV series. So anyway, thanks for listening. You can visit Black Cat's Shadow on the web at www.blackcatshadow.com. And you can also find me on Facebook and on Twitter. My Twitter handle is @BlackCatPodcast. You can also email me at blackcatpodcast@gmail.com with any comments or suggestions or any feedback. I really appreciate it. So the next episode that I will do will be a freaky flashback episode where I compare an older classic movie with a newer one with a similar plot. The newer movie will be 10 Cloverfield Lane, about some people taking shelter underground from an apocalypse that may or may not be real. And the older movie will be George Romero's classic, Day of the Dead, about some people taking shelter underground from an apocalypse all too real. So remember, when you look closer at the world around you, you might just find it as stranger and more mysterious than you thought, especially in the Black Cat's Shadow.